Have you noticed that there are some things that only make sense with video game logic? Braziers and torches still burning in crypts that haven't been opened for hundreds of years. Food that can be carried for the entire game and never goes rotten. Or my favourite, a deviously created dungeon with a terrible evil sealed behind a massive blocked door with an incredibly important key left behind in a random location, just waiting for the next Pottery-averse adventurer to stumble upon it. But what if the key decided to do that on purpose? What if they wanted to be found? My name is Graeldon, I'm on an impossible journey to review every Steam game in alphabetical order, and today we're playing 100 Keys to Your Heart. Let's begin. Released on the 17th of January 2023, developed and published by Yorshin Game, this is a cute 2D puzzle platformer with mild Metroidvania elements, and it had a lot more depth than I was expecting. Well, not a massive amount of depth, but when you've just stepped out of a kiddie pool that you're pretty sure was 90% pee and found yourself in a cozy jacuzzi, it feels like a massive upgrade, even though you know it's nothing compared to a heated Olympic-sized swimming pool. Not that I can see any of those on the horizon, but anyway, I digress. In this game, you play not as poor clumsy Larry that managed to somehow trip over an incredibly inconveniently placed log, but instead play as the sentient key that unlocks the box for the engagement ring he was carrying. Well, that's kind of true because I don't think you're actually the key, but instead perhaps a spirit of some kinds that can only inhabit keys. As you'll see, the key game mechanic, see what I did there, is your ability to switch between different keys that you find while exploring, each of which has different abilities. More on that shortly, because first we need to look at the main menu and options. Now, first impressions are strong. We get a glimpse of the game's art style, but more importantly, the music. Not only is it original, but it's also incredibly thematic, featuring the sound of keys jangling as a key instrument. Yeah, okay, that one was bad. Overall, this menu is a bit of a weird one because it's both good and horrendous due to some odd design quirks. This game was definitely built to be played with a controller, specifically an Xbox controller as indicated by some of the in-game tutorial prompts, but it can be played with mouse and keyboard if you wish. Well, technically only the keyboard. The mouse cursor is locked to the center of the screen and won't budge, but you can use the arrow keys or left thumbstick to navigate the menus. In general, the menu buttons are a sandy color and your currently selected option will be in blue. In the settings menu, we have pretty much what I'd expect for a basic 2D game like this. Separate sliders for music and sound effects, screen resolution, windowed mode, and language options. This would be great, except that when trying to select them, your blue selected option vanishes. You still move through the choices one by one and can move them, you just can't see what you have selected until you move it. Pretty clunky, and I'm not quite sure how this made the final cut. This carries over into the level selection menu as well, even going so far as needing to move the cursor to the right to select the scroll bar, then back to the left to select an actual level. And even worse, it only highlights blue if it's a level you've unlocked. Otherwise, good luck figuring out where your cursor is. It might be over here, or over there. Who knows? It's unfortunate because it's nicely presented, but it's simply a terrible user experience. It's like being blindfolded, then given an unfamiliar off-brand controller covered in thumbtacks. You kind of know what you're doing, but everything feels wrong and a bit painful. Thankfully, these controller woes don't carry over into the main game, which I'm pleased to report is a delight to play. After the short introductory cutscene, we're dropped straight into the gameplay, and I have to say I instantly loved the vibes. The clean, cartoonish art style, the limited 3D backgrounds that provide a sense of depth and space without being too distracting, and the cute yet creepy design of the key character gives this game a pretty strong sense of personality. There's also something lovely about the fluidity of the character animations when walking or jumping. You can tell that they spent a decent amount of time getting the details right to make the key characters really feel alive. While some people might prefer more intricate backgrounds such as those found in the Trine series, I think the simpler approach here works well considering the strong emphasis on puzzle solving. Speaking of, the mechanics here are pretty simple yet interesting in terms of how they are layered. Scattered throughout the game are other keys, which which you will add to your keychain by touching them. You can use the right trigger to switch between available keys and use the left trigger to put a key back onto a hook. The more keys you carry, the more your movement speed is slowed and the smaller your jump height is. Additionally, keys can be different lengths, able to open doors with either 1, 2, or 3 pins. The devs have layered these mechanics really nicely through clever puzzle design that tasks you with having not just the correct combination of keys to pass a platforming section, but also to unlock the doors on the other side. But of course, the mechanics don't stop there. Progress far enough into the game and you'll start to find keys with different abilities. Heavy keys can be used to pull down levers that act as switches for doors. Brown keys will cause plant life to grow in fertile soil. Flame keys will ignite coals to power machinery, and USB keys allow you to teleport between 2 locations. These are all interesting enough in isolation, but when you start combining them together, you start to see just how clever the puzzle design is. And how challenging some of the puzzles are too. Some of these managed to stump me for a while, but all was solvable without outside help, and the difficulty doesn't have extreme spikes in any places. There are also platforming hazards to watch out for, the usual stuff you'd expect from a platforming game like spike pits, and you will die from taking any amount of damage. Thankfully, each puzzle is preceded by a portal that acts as both a checkpoint and a respawn point. You can also press Y at any time to reset the current puzzle, teleporting you back to the portal. Now, what made this feel quite special to me was the level design. You start out in a pretty dreary castle dungeon, then move to an outdoor garden area, then a furnace, and lastly, a surreal data area. Each area has its own artistic theme, but also its own musical theme, lending quite a bit of personality to each zone while retaining the core identity. But, more importantly, in Metroidvania style, the level loops back on itself around the halfway point, with a new key ability allowing you to open a new route in a previously completed area. That said, comparing it to a Metroidvania is probably a bit generous as there aren't any permanent upgrades. You're always trading keys and pressing onwards using whatever tools are available, and you will always have exactly what you need and nothing more. The design of the game world is really more akin to a figure 8 that crosses over itself and loops you back to the start, allowing you to solve a puzzle that was unsolvable at the very beginning. It's a very neat design, and one that I wasn't expecting from the outset. I was incorrectly assuming it would be a completely linear journey, like many puzzle platformers I've played in the past, so although this wasn't particularly in-depth, it was a pleasant surprise. I don't really want to say too much more, simply because this is a puzzle game. I want to avoid spoiling too many of the actual puzzles, because they're, the fun bit. And it's a fairly short one too. It was over much faster than I was expecting, and that's totally my fault. I was expecting there to be 100 levels, so I was understandably quite surprised when everything wrapped up after level 43. And then I realized that the game was called 100 Keys, not 100 Locks, so yeah, actually that checks out. That's on me. If you enjoy puzzle platformers with interesting mechanics and you have both $11.79 dues and a couple of hours to spare, there are certainly worse ways to spend your time and money. That said, considering how short the game is, I do feel that it's somewhat overpriced, so perhaps wait to pick this one up on sale. There's also not too much else that I have to say about this game without spoiling the game itself. The art is great, the music is lovely, it's well animated, the puzzles are thoughtful, and it's basically just a consistently solid experience from start to finish, aside from the main menu, but we won't dwell on that. The puzzles are challenging, but not frustratingly so, and the level design makes everything feel like one cohesive piece, because it, is. I try to break the game whenever possible, and the worst I managed to achieve was being able to jump over things that I probably shouldn't have been able to in 1 or 2 places, but I like to think of that as creative problem solving within the limitations of the game. And in trying to break the game, I also found that there are some hidden keyholes scattered throughout, if you're looking for an extra level of challenge. The devs also have a second game that appears to be in development called Four Neros, which, judging from the screenshots, looks like a combination of Fire Emblem with cute forest critters, which, at least on the surface, sounds like a great combination, so I'm excited to see what they create next. So, with all of that in mind, my final score for 100 Keys to Your Heart is a brown key out of 10. It looks a bit basic and ugly from the outside, but it actually manages to do some pretty cool and unexpected things. Thanks for watching. Welcome to the end of the video. As always, thank you to all the members supporting this channel and allowing me to continue this silly project, as well as special thank yous to Bull, the sponsor of today's Larry, and our Knight of the Holy Grail, Freaky Feline. If you'd like to sponsor a Larry or just help support the channel, please check out the links below. That's all for now, so if you've made it this far, here's a sneak peek of the next game. And until next time, take care.